Welcome to Kansas City RealTalk, brought to you by KCRER. I'm Alex Gehring.
I'm Bobbi Howe.
Bobbi.
What?
Let's be honest here. We already recorded the interview for this episode.
100% we have.
And I'm just going to tell you guys, it went a little bit longer than our normal interviews, but you are absolutely in for a treat. I'm going to go back and listen to this episode when it comes back, which I never do. But we had Ron Phipps, who you've known for some time, and he was a new introduction for me. I can't wait for everybody to hear this interview.
Yeah, so for those of you that do not know, and you're about to be introduced to him as you listen to this, Ron Phipps is a former president of the National Association of REALTORS. He was there in 2011. He's been a realtor for more than 43 years. I think that's how long he's been licensed, but he is the third of four generations. His grandfather founded a real estate company actually here in Kansas City, actually is where they started. And then the mom picked up and moved him to Rhode Island, and she started a real estate company there. And now his children are also in the industry with them. But he is just an amazing human being. He now travels the country doing trainings and speaking and all kinds of stuff. And he was actually here in Kansas City today because he was meeting with the incoming class of our UMKC Realtor Leadership Academy. And we kind of bugged him to come stop by and see us, and I am so glad that we did.
And I'm so jealous of the UMKC Leadership Academy grads.
I know, they got that time with him today.
Oh my gosh.
It's just an amazing. But Al, do you know what else this episode is? It's not just Ron Phipps, who's amazing. Do you know what else this episode is?
It is our 150th episip.
We need the kazoos. We need cupcakes. We don't have any of that today, apparently.
Oh my God. You know, for Kip.
Seriously, Kip.
What the heck?
But I just want to say something, though, about our 150th episode, okay?
Yeah, it's important. I can feel what you're going to say.
We've been doing this since November of 2018, which sounds like a really, that's like 2 years pre-COVID. I don't remember things
it's
pre-COVID.
Like a different era.
It didn't even happen.
Yeah.
However, if you have not rated us with 5 stars for this podcast by now, you are officially our arch nemesis. I said it. It's there. It's done.
That was in the outline, wasn't it?
It was.
I didn't.
And it was one of my favorite things when I read the outline. I was like, yep, we're saying that.
150 episodes that I still don't always read the outline right
or
before
never. Never.
And also, I thought that you were going to thank our amazing producer, Amber, for all of the work that she puts into this, including writing up the outlines that I don't read.
I said nice things about her on the last episode. I was scared to say nice things again because she will turn 75 shades of red over there. We have to slowly give the compliments to Amber because we embarrass her, but she is amazing and awesome, and she makes us look and sound really good.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we want to do my book bit? We don't even have to even do my book bit.
Hell with it. No book bit.
Let's just we'll save this book bit for the next one because this is actually a book I waited way too long to read, and I was so excited once I finally read it. So,
with no further delay, enjoy Ron Phipps.
Welcome back to Kansas City RealTalk, brought to you by KCRER. We are here with the illustrious Ron Phipps, former president of the National Association of REALTORS. And before we get going, and I kind of warned them, but I didn't really warn them. My goal is during this episode is that our listeners understand what an amazing gem of a human being you are. And I'm going to try to get through this without crying. But I am sitting in this room today partially because of you and your influence on me and in this industry and in this career. I first was introduced to you in 2008 when you came to Missouri Realtors Leadership Academy. And to this day, whenever I see our Leadership Academy people and they're like, oh my God, I just came from Leadership Academy. That was the best class ever. And I go, which one was it? Every single time, it's Ron Phipps. And then in 2009, I started getting involved at the National Association when we started the Missouri YPN. You and Charlie Oppler were 2 leaders who took me literally by the hand and introduced me to everybody in the room. Right. I would not still be here today if it wasn't someone like you. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
So thank you for the start. Wow. In leadership, none of us are self-made. And the gift of our experiences, we had people who did that for us. And they did it because they saw in us the potential to be amazing architects and authors. And this conversation makes me proud in one breath because I see what you've done with it. In leadership, our role is to harness resources and to empower them, to bring them forth. And I was at a leadership class this morning in which I said, I need to let you know one of my leadership secrets. I've always been someone that people wanted to control. They wanted to overwhelm. They wanted to stop. And I said, the irony of ironies is they tried to bury me and they tried to bury us. And that's exactly where we are as an industry right now. But they didn't realize we're seeds. We're seeds. We are going to water these new seeds. We are going to protect the saplings. We're going to make sure the tree grows strong and there will be fruit. But the fact of the matter is, that is a multi-generational dynamic in leadership. We didn't create it. We just furthered it. So we have the privilege of sharing footsteps with each other on life's leadership path and in life's path in a way that we can make a difference. That is an awesome opportunity. And as we were walking in, you were kidding me about, like, you keep going. And I go, I have the places to get. I have no idea where those are, okay? And I still want to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. But I'm privileged to have had an amazing journey. And I'm privileged to know that I can't tell you what the right next steps are in your life's journey. But the role that I'm privileged to have as a guide, a mentor, a light, a protector, is to say, go for it, go for it, go for it. Oh, and by the way, if you fall, hey, we're there. You got this. We'll pick you up, and we go. There is this fact of leadership that's always fascinating to me. People look and say, gee, you're accomplished, you have these titles, et cetera. And the overarching thing is titles are temporary, leadership's for life. Mm-hmm. You don't need the title to be a leader. And frankly, you're going to be more influential when you're a past leader, hopefully, but generally. But with that as an observation, if you have the ability right now to reset, so when it goes bad, and it does, and you say, okay, that play's over, next step, you'll be able to get through this moment. But I've been doing this a long time. This is more than 40 years. And I'm the third of 4 generations of realtors within a family, which is both a legacy, an opportunity, and a challenge. I was just on the phone with my son Matthew, and we were discussing how to handle a really difficult situation. And I'm going, it's really nice that we can talk about things other than real estate, but boy, did we talk about a lot of real estate. And as I look at that experience, I'm still waking up every day with enthusiasm for what the day presents and a hunger to make a difference. Thank you for the gift of sharing the impact, because often when you're teaching, you have no clue. And for those of you listening, in this profession, it's hard. And if you want to get a good introduction to where we are right now, the Duke women's basketball coach did a very short 2-minute and 49-second video, and it's called Life is Hard. And she talks about the fact that if you're waiting for life to get easy, it never gets easy. It just doesn't. What happens is you become better dealing with hard. And that's what we as practitioners need to do right now. We got to get better at dealing with hard. Is this the single biggest challenge I've seen? I thought COVID was pretty intense. I thought the Great Recession was pretty intense. This probably eclipses both of those. But what I'm proud of as an industry is we're, one, listening to each other, we're acknowledging where we are, and we're not falling into it, we're stepping into it. This threshold is a high threshold, but it's all doable. Oh, and by the way, we'll be better for it. That doesn't mean it's good or right, but we're going to be better for it. I'm not worried about it, and I keep feeling like the mustard seed right now. I'm a tiny seed, and there are absolutely tons of dirt on top of us right now. We got this. Mm-hmm.
We do.
We got this.
Goodness, Ron. Well, I mean, you've already given us so much, but I guarantee that every single one of our listeners already wants to be one of your saplings. And I think we should probably, if we were entrepreneurial at all, we would create T-shirts that just said Ron Saplings and try to.
We might make this happen for you,
yeah. We're going to have a merch store based around this. But talk to us a little bit. I'm so curious now. Talk to us a little bit about your influences and what sent you into leadership. What was that? I mean, we just talked about how you were this huge spark for Bobbi, and how that doesn't happen without somebody igniting that, right? What and who ignited that for you?
So the short answer is my family, particularly my mother's father, my grandfather was the first realtor in the family, and my mom. My father to a degree, but we always raised to whom much is given, much is expected. And my grandfather never cared if I got a 4.0 or finished first or, did well. It was always, was it your best effort? He was really tough on that. If I won the race and it wasn't my best effort, he would say, hey, my blood runs through your veins. Do not embarrass me. Do not disappoint me. And I'm like, that was intense, particularly for a 6-year-old, right? It's like, that said, the family dynamic of doing your best was always the precursor. And my mom started the business when we moved from Kansas City to Rhode Island. I was still in high school. And it was just an interesting time. I was the oldest of 5. And my mom looked around and looked at the way real estate was being done, and it was awful. You had to look at houses Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 10 to 4. And on Wednesday, you could only look from 2 to 4 because they played golf. 3 guys ran the businesses in the town we were in. And my mom said, I can do this. And we're relocation people, and I had to buy a house. So she started the firm, and the 3 guys who owned the real estate firms in East Greenwich all put $100 in betting against a Dizzy Blonde. And my mom always used to say, there's nothing wrong with being tough. Okay, there's never an excuse to be ugly. And she was a tenacious competitor. And I have the same gene. When people tell me what I can't do, they set the goal line. And that's a family trait. We're fierce competitors. But we're fierce competitors for the right outcomes. We don't just want to win for our customers and clients. We want to make a difference. So 5 years later, the last guy closed his office. She called Randy Harrington and said, hey, Randy, congratulations to your retirement to Maine. What happened to $300? And he hung up the phone at her. But she changed real estate in Rhode Island along with some other pioneer women because otherwise it was a not merely male-dominated, it was a male-controlled environment. So that was such a good life lesson for me as we went on. But to the NAR question, I got involved in the MLS. I was not a local board president because I wanted to understand how the business happened. And from that, I became statewide MLS president, became state president, and I became a subject matter expert in MLSs. And it just intrigued me. And then the IDX policies, the VOW policies, I was front and center in. And then NAR called me forward to be in leadership. Richard Mendenhall was an incredible mentor. He just was so good to me, and he kept saying, you got this, kid. And I'm like, and I was telling on the way in, I was sharing with Kip that I had a reputation of being the person who would ask the questions nobody else would ask, that you shouldn't ask, right? In polite company, you don't ask that question. And my first job at NAR and a committee chair was vice chair of the MLS Forum, and I wanted to do a forum with no agenda. And staff goes, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, it's a forum. Realtors are free thinkers. This is supposed to be entrepreneurial. And they said, no, we don't do that. Cliff Nersbach, who was on staff at the time, got the task of harnessing me. So he went ahead and said, we're going to do a agenda. And I looked at the agenda. I says, well, it just has discussion. He said, yeah. I said, I'm good. Like, I got what I want. Like, there was no – so when we did it. And then afterwards, they all started calling me captain. And I thought that was so complimentary, right? I'm captain. I'm from the Ocean State, et cetera. So Cliff retired about 5 years ago. And I said, Cliff, I never asked this question, but why did you guys call me captain? He said, you really want to know. By the way, when someone asks you if you really want to know, it's not complimentary. It just never is. And I said, okay, I think. He said, well, you remember the time that you wanted the agenda without an agenda? I said, yeah. He said, from that moment on, everybody in member policy, professional standards, and MLS all called you Captain Calamity. And I'm like, ouch. And he said, well, you didn't live up to your name. I said, I think that's a compliment. But the bottom line is, in this industry right now, I look for one thing in future leaders. It's coachability. We can teach you every single skill that you need to lead with, every single one. But if you're not coachable, it doesn't work. And I was saying to the Leadership Academy, you know what? If you're not coachable, volunteer for other organizations. There are lots of other great organizations. Go to them. Don't stay here. And please don't export your problems to the state and national levels. Bad leaders don't get better on different stages. They're not good. But I said part of the mindset and part of the things that my mentors taught me is stop asking, what did we do wrong? When you ask what you did wrong, you set a tone for a conversation that is hard not to take personally and hard not to become simply a vetting event, a complaining event. But if you invert the question and say, Bobbi, how might we do better? All of a sudden, we've pivoted in a way in which the mind is no longer what's wrong. The mind moves from blame to fix to potential amazing outcome. And that's actually why I'm excited about this crisis, because I actually think we're asking that question, again, for the first time in a long time. I've been around for a long time. You've been around more recent. But the bottom line is we've gotten complacent in our success. We've gotten complacent in our routine. This has shaken us to the core, but it doesn't destroy us. It's just shaken us. And what I love about the question right now is how do we do better is the right question for us as an industry to be asking in light of the incentivization that we've had by all these decisions. My answers are way too long. I'm sorry.
No, this is beautiful.
No. Like this is one of the reasons I love him, because you just listen for hours and you're like, oh, hours passed? I didn't even know that. It's funny you bring up, Captain Calamity and that. One of my favorite NAR experiences ever was during Tom Salomon's presidency. And we sat on executive committee together. You sat on one side of me.
That's right.
And current
the behavior
NAR
modification seats. Did you notice?
Yeah,
we were in the, yes.
We were behavior modified. We got in trouble a lot. But Ron sat on one side of me, and current NAR president Kevin Sears sat on the other side of me. And it was like the angel and the devil sitting on my shoulders. And everybody's like, which one is which? And I'm like, it varied from time to time.
It was.
But we got shushed a lot.
A lot.
But I learned so much from the two of you during that time, and understanding, because so often what we hear is that everything just gets rubber stamped at NAR. Yeah. And what I learned, no, we have some really interesting discussions and learn a lot during that time. And learning from you're a leader's leader, and that's what I think is so genuine about the human being you are.
Well, thank you. The fact of the matter is we get it wrong on occasion.
Yeah.
And to assume that because we're a big organization we don't make mistakes is asinine.
Right.
And good leaders want that critical observation. And that was the thing I was saying today, saying, look, I got to be open to the criticism that's personal. Mm-hmm. Say, how do you do better? It can still be, this was not good.
Right.
Okay. But if you foreclose that, you limit real potential. We don't learn from success, we learn from failure. And the fact of the matter is, in leadership, I keep saying, as a leader, tell people about how you messed up. Share the big mistakes, because those are going to illuminate, one, how not to repeat it, but two, introduce the vulnerability. At the end of the day, it is vulnerability that creates connection with the people you're leading. Failure is universal, success is not. You're going to connect with everybody on the failure side, and some of the mistakes I've made are massive. And they're going, wait a minute, you did those mistakes and kept going? I said, I only made them once. Okay? But if I make them once, it's okay. Ideally not the same one.
Bobbi, I love this idea of the leader's leader. And Ron, you just talked about how leaders, good leaders, can be coached, right? And you must be able to be coached.
Right.
Well, I think that we all can look at any number of organizations and recognize that there are leaders that fall, they're very susceptible to hubris over time. They reach a
and the organization gets that virus.
Absolutely.
NAR had that virus before this trial.
May or may not be what I'm getting at, right? And so, but you reach a certain point, and it's possible that you can fall susceptible to that level of hubris. What do you say to people who what do you say to people who struggle to find coaches? Because I do think, don't you feel that as people rise up in an organization, that they become they can have this perception that they're nearly untouchable, and that's such a dangerous place to be. People don't they might not make themselves appear to be open to coaching. What do you say to people who are in that situation, and how do you make sure that you continue to receive coaching as you're in that kind of a leadership position? Because it shouldn't stop once you become a leader, right?
No, and kind of one of the secret leadership lessons is if you ask people for advice, almost no one goes back to the person they got the advice from to give a report. Exceptional leaders go back not merely when it works well and say thank you, but when it doesn't work well. And to go back to your mentor and say, look, here's what I heard the instruction to be. Here's what I did. And you get a confirmation, yep, I followed the recipe, but here's what happened. I had a lot of mentors that became leadership advocates for me because I would go back when it was messed up. They say either I didn't do it right, and on occasion I really didn't do it right. But there are other occasions in which the plan that they proposed, I did, and I executed meticulously, but it was flat. It just did not work. But now we collectively rethink how to do that. So on one score, it's creating a relationship that is ongoing rather than a single event of information. Mentoring is a process. It is not a single event. So you got to understand that to begin with. And the other thing is there are so many people, particularly in this organization, that are so generous that if you go to them and say, hey, I'd like some advice on this, they will welcome that. That's part of the culture that makes us exceptional. We are very, very sharing in that regard. In reference to people saying no, the fact of the matter is, if you get a no, and I do this in leadership, I say, look, stop asking people to serve on committees. Say, look, I need your help. I need your help on this project and this work group. Never a committee, okay? And I certainly don't want to ask you, hey, I'd like you to be president of this association in 20 years. They're not going to say yes to that, okay? But if you say, I need your help on this project and get a short commitment for a short period of time, but I love it when someone says no to me, and I'll say, okay, you've said no. I'm going to call you back tomorrow to ask you to reconsider. You said, don't bother. I'm going to call you back tomorrow. And you're going to give me another no. And then the day after, I'm going to call you back and say, look, I'm going to take the no for this year, but I'm going to put you down for next year. And you're going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, but it's okay. But what I need from you today are 2 names to reach out to. And you're going to go, okay, I don't have them. So I call tomorrow. I get the 2 names. And what do? I reference you in my call to the names you've given me. So they're going to call you and say, Ron told me that you recommended for this. Thank you so much. And there's going to be real silence on the other end of the phone because they're not going to say what they're really thinking. But I'm going to get at least 1 out of the 2. The same thing is true of mentors. There are several mentors I went to, and I just got not a rebuff, I got a indifference. Hey, I'll help you along the way. And never another response. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a reflection on me. It was a reflection where they are. And sometimes you connect and other times you don't. That's okay. But look around because they're there. One other big secret, I say secret, one strategy. I always surrounded myself with the best and the brightest. People thought I was a great leader. Full disclosure, I do the imposter syndrome better than most. My skill set is caring and empathy. But in terms of strategic thinking, know good questions to ask, but I also know how to identify the brightest people in the organization. My 2 VPs were Elizabeth Mendenhall and Vince Malta. They were so good because Elizabeth and I tend to be emotional. We tend to want to leap off of the cliff and jump in to fix the problem. Vince is an attorney by training. He is one of those reasonable, disciplined, thoughtful thinkers I've ever met. And he would say to both of us, would you please step away from the edge? And we're like, no, we don't want to step away. We want to fix it. And he said, would you at least look into the abyss you're jumping into? He has an uncanny way of telling you you're wrong by saying, what are you trying to do? And you tell him. He says, and what's your strategy? And you tell him. He says, now, how do you think that'll work? And you kind of go through, oh, that's not going to work. So he doesn't tell you it's a stupid idea. They taught me more about combining empathy, compassion, and passion with discipline and understanding leadership is both outcome and process. But if you have the right subject matter experts, you won't make bad decisions. You can make bad decisions, but you won't make them out of a lack of due diligence. I don't mind if I mess up after we did due diligence, but when I react rather than respond, when I react and react without thoughtfulness. That's when I make mistakes I get angry at, because those are reactive rather than thoughtful. The other thing is, almost everybody I asked said yes when I asked. Say, hey, can you help me on this? I'm not calling to say, do you want to be my mentor for the next 20 years? I say, look, I got this problem. Can you listen? The collaborative attitude, the generosity of our members is truly legendary. At the end of the day, we're good transaction managers, but what we're amazing at, particularly in the residential side, is our ability to care. When my mom started the business, she had two phrases that just stuck with me. The first one was, there's nothing wrong with being tough. There's never an excuse to be ugly. Okay, and I always thought that was a really good lesson. And I can be tough when I need to be, but I'm never, ever disrespectful or ugly. But the second one that I smile at is, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I keep thinking, we're strong enough. Like, I don't need to get any strong. I got this. We have the gift of this moment. And what I know is that when we respect each other's most precious, irreplaceable thing, which is time, particularly in leadership, people will share footsteps with us. But if I'm disrespectful of your time, it doesn't happen. I'm going to move on. And I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago, and I was really frustrated because it was a meeting that I didn't think was necessary. They had a bizarre agenda. We really need you there. And I got there, and it was supposed to be an hour meeting, and 65 minutes into it, I'm like, there's no business purpose. We're not talking anything. We're all basically spending time. And I got up to leave, and they said, well, we're not done. And I'm like, you made it an hour meeting. But I walked out thinking, look, I'm old enough that I'll give people 3 chances at bat. But the rest of the people in the organization, it's one and done. If you bring me to a meeting with no business purpose or you run over, I'm not coming back. And it's funny because I went to a meeting a day later, and there wasn't a lot to the meeting, but the person who ran the meeting finished on time. And I was thinking, in leadership, the bar is so low. If you finish on time, you ran a great meeting. Okay.
Yeah. I always know starting my meeting exactly on time. And we finish at least a minute early if possible, because we respect people's time. And it always is amazing to me. People are like, you actually run an efficient meeting. No, I just run a meeting the way it's supposed to be ran. It's not such a hard concept. And we have to respect other people and what they've given to us.
And it is a gift.
It is a gift.
And the irony of ironies is, if you say it's going to end at 10 o'clock and you say at 10:15, hey, I need an extra half hour, that's a fail. Mm-hmm. It's a big fail. Oh, and by the way, next time I'm going to say, shoot, I know that they won't run on time. Do I really have the time to even show up?
Yeah.
That's it. Actions are so much more important than words. And the actions say, look, our members are really, really generous, but don't disrespect them. When you disrespect their time, you're disrespecting them.
Yeah. So
pretty crazy.
Ron, you talked about being tough. You talked about being strong. And we've talked about all of the things you've done in the real estate sphere, which is a lot. But you're tough and strong in a lot of ways outside the real estate sphere. I believe Ironman comes to mind, and some of your other adventures. Talk to us about some of the amazing life adventures you've had, because you've had some incredible adventures in your life. You're a well-rounded human.
So the irony of ironies is, I have a personality defect. When someone tells me what I can't do, they set the goal line. I shouldn't tell a story, but I will. When I was 100 days from graduation in college, the professor whose opinion really mattered to me was at dinner with my roommate from college. And he said to my roommate, and by the way, this is a professor who never gave A's, so I always debated about whether to take the course or not, because I knew it was going to negatively impact my GPA. And I got 3 different courses I got B+s from. So I got 3.5 from each time, but it was like, it was a debate, right? So he's with my roommate from college and says to the roommate, he says, Ron is a really interesting individual. And at the time I was doing a lot of leadership, and they saw that. But he said to my roommate, Ron's destined to be mediocre because he's going to lead with his heart rather than his intellect. For someone who was about to turn 21, I got taken off at the waist. It was the most devastating criticism I'd had in my entire life, and it mattered. it mattered. For 20 years, I didn't tell anybody. Like my roommate waited 3 days to tell me, saying, I'm not sure you're up for this. And we've not talked about it since. It was just one of those things, you need to know this, et cetera. But in my early 40s, I started laughing, going, what an incredible life gift. Because every time I got done with something, I'd say, well, I'm not going to be mediocre. And I pushed 5% or 10% further. I've been an open water swimmer my entire life. I've done, Chesapeake, 4.4 miles, St. Croix, 5 miles, Alcatraz, 1.5. It's just been my thing. And I was told you could never run because you're a big guy. And I did a 5K and then a 10K. And then the guy, Ken Rudman, told me, there's no way you could run a half marathon. I'm going, I did. I had a brilliant coach who understood me better than I understood myself. And that's kind of the coaching piece that's important. Coachability is important, but also having a coach that understands your capacity. In 2000, so a long time ago, I did Boston early in, that's in April, and then I did Ironman later that year. This wouldn't mean anything except to athletes, but my marathon time was only 10 minutes difference between it in Boston and in Ironman. I was brilliantly coached, okay? Mike Ritchie, D3 Multisports in Boulder, Colorado. Michael, I love you. You're amazing. And he also learned I could never run more than 30 miles a week without having failure. I'd have plantar, I'd have all sorts of stuff. And he said, okay. And he would log everything. Like I was on a spreadsheet before spreadsheets were possible. But the bottom line is I wouldn't be before you if I hadn't learned the discipline of periodization and training to get ready. And it's a footnote. 10 days ago, my son Ian and I were going to do the Timberline Trail. And we had trained for it, but not at altitude. So we got up there, and we were going to do 14 miles the first day, 11 the second, and 9 the third. And the first day, the temperatures were in the upper 80s. We were at altitude, and I never get altitude sick, and I was altitude sick. So I finished the 14 miles. It should have been like 9.5 hours. We were there on the path for 12 on Mount Hood. It was great. But afterwards, I said, look, I thought I was ready. I'm not ready. And the next day, we decided not to do the 12 and the other one. We've already done two of the three pieces, if you will. Do the other one later. But we went down to Smith Rock, and we climbed around Smith Rock. We went out to the coast. We climbed in wineries. And climbing in wineries is really a good oxymoron. You know, you climb in the vineyards long enough to get to the wine, to sample the wine. I had the most incredible time with my second son. But it was an acknowledgement that I no longer am motivated by what the world thinks. My best skill set is my best skill. My most satisfying life experience is being a father and a grandfather. And the best life choice I made was choosing the mother of my kids. And the piece I would share, particularly in this profession, is we're so good at providing amazing consumer experiences for our customers and clients. But we got to make sure that's not at the expense of our families. They deserve the best of us, not what's left of us. And I say that because that's always a struggle for me. I'm in awe of my kids. My kids are young adults with kids of their own. They've got the best of us and then some. And some of the stuff they have, I don't know where they got it, but it's like, wow. Susan, let's be clear. They got more from Susan than they got from Dad. My wife, they got more from. But with all of that, I had the privilege of sharing footsteps with them. In fact, Ian was saying to me, I've known him longer as an adult than I've known him as a kid. Wow. And we built a house in the mountains. You'll love this. This is like real estate 101. You got to own places everywhere, right? So we built a house in the mountains of Vermont. I was trying to recreate my childhood from Oregon. And my wife says, what are we doing? I said, we're going to build a house. We've had this condo in Stowe for 20 years. I want to build a house. She said, why? I said, I want a house big enough for the whole family. And she goes, it's the two of us. I said, no, it's not. It's the whole family. So we finished it about 24 months ago. Every other Christmas, all 16 of us are there. It's a 3-bedroom house, but it sleeps all 16 of us. But I'm acknowledging that life is a series of celebrations of the gift of each other rather than transactions and things. There's a wonderful word in Portuguese. It's Brazilian Portuguese. It's called saudade. Saudade is longing for what was, for the water that has slipped through your hands, for young love, for time at the beach, for what was. And I was walking with Vince Malta last week, and we were walking. I said, Vince, I'm in this crazy place right now where I have pre-saudade. He goes, what are you saying? Like, I said, I I know I'm going to be longing for this moment again. And I'm wasting the moment by knowing I'm going to be longing for it. That's such a indelicate way of, you're here now. Don't waste the gift of this moment. And don't underestimate the impact that the shared moment can have on other people. I rode on the plane yesterday with a young man from Shawnee, Kansas. Just a really interesting young man. We talked for the 3 hours from LaGuardia here. And he shared his life's journey, and I'm so happy for him. And he's coming to a wedding this weekend. He has a nephew who is on the spectrum. And JJ is going to have an amazing weekend because his uncle's there. We got to collect, in this time of lots of criticism and lots of difficulty, we got to collect those bubbles of light and hope because they're all around us, but we got to treasure them. Well, this is way too philosophical. Okay.
No, it's not.
No, I know. I'm just like, I know we have to wrap up, but I don't want to.
I feel so I don't. I do not go back and listen to our episodes, but I'm not just saying this. I feel like I will go back and listen to this, and I want to go back and listen to it multiple times just to make sure that I don't end up with sedage and feel like I missed out on not taking in every morsel of what you're giving us here. Anyway, I'm so grateful for your generosity today.
It's been my privilege. And the fact of the matter is, we're available for each other. People just have to reach out. Yeah. And that's one of your gifts. Like I smile when you're identifying me as procuring cause in your journey. It's such a misnomer. I had the privilege of walking with you for a few footsteps. But the impact that you have on the industry and the way you cultivate other leaders, and your coaching style is wonderful because it's at heart level. It's technically correct, but you make sure that you connect with them here before you say, okay, here's how you'd improve. And I think a little more empathy and humanity in how we treat each other within the industry would be really, really welcome. There's a lot of anxiety right now for cause. We're learning something new. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we did a transition in the company for a new login system. Oh my God, I got to learn this again. And I was like, and then I got it done. I got this done. I got this. We've got this. And we just got to trust passing through the moment. We started in, we touched on it. These are wild times. Don't let this crisis, this challenge be wasted. The most progress is made in the times of greatest challenge. It just is. And the other thing is, simply because we've done something forever doesn't make it the best way to do it. So when someone has a better idea, before you discount it and say, well, that's not the way we do it here, stop, listen. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I can only say thank you.
Always a pleasure.
You've just
pleasure.
As always, and could always listen to you for hours and hours. And for those that do not know, you teach a wide variety of classes. You're traveling and doing things all over the country. But one of the classes that you helped form for the National Association is the lead class on vision. I'm an approved instructor for that. However, you and Elizabeth are the top two. And I will say that Elizabeth was my state influence who got me to go to the National.
Right.
And then you were that person at the National who picked up. And so just having those influences in my life. And it's funny you talk about, your vice presidents of Vince and Elizabeth. When we do Hood to Coast, which you brought up Timberline, Hood to Coast, Elizabeth is our driver. Vince sits right in front of me. And just so everybody knows, Vince Malta tells the best dad jokes ever. He can take any conversation and just make a joke from it. You're just like, Vince, really? And you facepalm. He is something else. He's an amazing human being.
He is a life gift.
He is.
And the fun part about it is, you can do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But don't waste the opportunity, though. This is an incredibly challenging moment. but it's an awesome opportunity. And you guys are in one of the best places in the universe for that entrepreneurship, that imagination, that collaboration to happen.
Yeah.
You guys, it's also fun to be back here to listen to the accents. It's like I forgot. Accents are great here.
And we love your accent as well. Exactly. Yeah,
I know. It's all good.
Yeah. But, well, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you for making extra time before you get on a plane and head back home. So,
Alrighty. Thank you all. All the best.